point in my life, I was no question about I was going to become a Methodist minister.
Hmm.
In fact, I used to play church and preach to my imaginary congregation that sat in the stairway that led to our upstairs in our house. And when my dad died, it was my reaction to that it turned that whole world upside down. And like I said, he was a very strong man, so it couldn't possibly have been his fault that he would have died. And so I blamed everything I had onto God. It was his fault. He deserted me, and I just became very quite rebellious and hard to live with. Uh, a stupid kid. Uh, changed a lot of my habits. I even actually started smoking. I'd have a beer once in a while when I could get it. I was still underage, but when high school was over, then I decided I would go into the Marine Corps. I had three older brothers who had been in the Marines, and so I thought that's what I would do as a chaplain. But the Marine Corps doesn't have chaplains. They their chaplains are assigned to the Marines from the Navy. The same as corpsmen, by the way, and as you know. And so I thought, well, okay, well, I could become a chaplain in the Navy, and I could get attached to the Marine Corps. And that would appease my brothers at least that much. But when I turned against God after my father's death, the chaplain was out the window, and I enlisted. And at that time, Vietnam War, of course, was going on. And I said, well, that's good. War, more the better. More of my stupidity was surfacing, and and that's how I ended up in those yellow footprints.
It's okay that you decided to go to where the little hills were. We won't hold it against you. We understand that the gators and the sand fleas might be a little bit too much for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
I,
they, go ahead.
I, yeah, I went through a lot of that guff with my older brothers, so uh, I'm kind of used to that.
So there was something that you said, and there was a part that I wanted to highlight where you felt like it was abandonment, like he was taken away. You could just tell that there was the emotion that was there. Like it sucks. It as a young boy, there's like the logical perspective of even when you're an adult, you can logically understand it sound, but at the same time, it's really difficult to wrap your head around when somebody passes away. It's really it's hard. It's difficult.
Well, yeah, it was, and my dad was my hero, and being in high school, it just like I uh, you know, what's next? And so my total thought on that whole situation was about me. It all pointed to me. Uh, I didn't think about my mother's pain. I had a younger brother and sister who were without a dad growing up, and but that none of that bothered me whatsoever. My thought didn't go there. My thought was my loss and my pain, and it was all inward. And why would God do this to me? It was my thinking at that time.
I've had that conversation with God very similarly, but different. And, you know, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that if I could sit really, really quiet, I might be able to have a little bit more clarity. But so you went to San Diego, you went to the Marine Corps. and you went over to Vietnam. How many tours did you do overseas, sir?
I was in Vietnam for 9.5 months. Uh, I um I was in the Third Marine Division. We spent the entire tour right at Leatherneck Square,
Hmm.
which was a strategic area because that's where it was the best thing for the North Vietnamese to go through there to get to the southern communities and whatnot. So uh, I was there for 6 months before I was wounded, and then after that I was just wounded every once in a while, kind of. So I was shot in uh, the first time in March of '67, and then this is skipped a month, got shot again, and then third time uh, skipped another month, and then I was shot. And so it was the third time, which was uh, not much repairable at the field hospital or even the ship hospital, and so I was medevaced back to the United States. I get the the get getting back to the United States. I was in the hospital for several months, in a naval hospital. Uh, After I was released and back to full-time duty, then I went on I&I duty, which is instructor and inspector, where we instructed and inspected reserves. But at that time, our responsibility was also to notify next of kin when their Marine was wounded or killed in action. And there's times, Will, where that was much more difficult than being shot at. Much more difficult than being on a combat patrol.
Some people actually say it was more difficult to have to be medically separated from the battlefields and leaving your buddies behind, leaving your brothers behind, and than it is to be in a firefight. And it's the other thing of actually telling people that people passed. It's so hard because you're watching all those emotions in front of you. And being a Marine and also growing up in the time that you grew up in, I'm pretty sure it was really difficult to be able to identify those emotions.
The while in Vietnam, I made 2 beach landings uh, from the ships, and we landed by helicopter. So as a machine gunner, I carried the M60 machine gun plus had 100 rounds on the gun itself, plus a three of them strapped around me. So uh, helmet, flak jacket, backpack, 3 canteens of water, uh, K-bar, 45 pistol, E-tool. So there's a tremendous amount of weight. I was a skinny little kid to start with. And so it was really getting up there as far as weight. And we come in on a helicopter, and the helicopter, of course, didn't want to land. They wanted just us to get out, and so they could get away instead of take on fire of some sort. And so my question is, you want me to jump where? You know, with all that weight, because when you hit the ground, you knew you hit. And so we did that a couple times. But on the second time we did that, we went inland, and then it was getting dusk, and so we dug our fighting holes. And when mine was partially dug when we started receiving artillery. And when the artillery landed, it was the way it was coming in over the DMZ from the northern side. And it sounded like freight trains running into each other. It was so loud, and the smell, the explosion, and the shrapnel flying around. And the fighting hole just down a ways from me a little bit, the next hole down, were two Marines together in the same hole, and they received a direct hit. And that helps you. That sets you back somewhat when that happens. And remember, I went into Marine Corps hating God, blaming him for everything. Mm-hmm. And but that night in that fighting hole, the old adage, I think it was from World War I, said, "There's no atheists in foxholes," and and so in mine, that came to mind when I was there, and that's the first time since my dad's death. I was a little more respectful to God and asking for forgiveness for the way I had been.
Did you get any answers, or did he actually forgive you?
It became kind of like the prodigal son, over and over again. I certainly started to feel closer to God, but then I, slipped away some. When I got to after being in the hospital for several months, and then going on I&I duty, and then going to Marines' families to notify them, I questioned God again. That was quite an impact. Actually, started drinking considerably heavy. Never was a heavy drinker until then. In high school, I'd sneak a beer once in a while after my dad died, but before that, never. And so it's my spiritual life had been kind of like a roller coaster from that time on.
I know when I came back from Iraq myself, alcohol became my best friend. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the things that was okay to do. And my dad served in Vietnam as well. He did shore duty with the Navy. But when I came home from the Marine Corps, my dad said, "You're messed up. You're going to the VA." And how alcohol back, or at least the Marine Corps, founded in Tun Tavern, Pennsylvania, 1775, November 10th. Right. Like, we're not really taught to show the emotions, but we are taught that drinking's okay. But you probably remember this too during the time you were in there, God Country Corps. And
yes,
but I believe that the spirituality is a morality that really actually impacts our mentality. And not trying to be a poet when I say it like that, but it's how often do we actually give grace to God or give grace to whoever we are servant to, and being able to respect God's plan. Like, and I say that in the sense of, like, for me, I struggled with what I did. I've struggled with what I've seen. I struggled with the times that I was overseas. And you lost your dad, then Vietnam, then actually talking to the I duty. What was the catalyst that brought you back to God?
The so as I was on I duty, I had been there for a little over about a year, I guess, maybe a little more. And I was in the office, and we had two phones in the office. One was from headquarters of Marine Corps, and the other one was for whomever wanted to call us. And so the public phone, the headquarters of Marine Corps, of course, was to call us to tell us we were going to notify somebody. And the public phone rang, and I answered it, and it was my brother, my oldest brother, and he said, "Mother is going to die, and it'll probably be tonight." And so that was. I'd been through Vietnam, the death, the chaos, the turmoil. I came back. I was in the hospital for several months on a ward that had everybody on that ward except for me was an amputee. And I wasn't, because the surgeon said we may not have to remove your leg. And that was a shock when he told me that, since I never knew that was coming. And and then from there, and then to go to I duty and tell parents and wives that their husband was not coming back alive. So there's been a whole string of my life from the time my dad died up to this point. Now my mother's going to die. And the fact that I knew that, you know, she'd been sick, and we've talked about it. And she, in fact, she asked me if I'd be the guardian of my younger brother and sister if she died before they were graduated from high school. And so that was, I said, well, you know, of course I will. And so I was discharged from the Marines to be the guardian of my younger brother and sister. Now at this time I'm 23. I'm not much more a kid than they are. They were 13 and 11, if I remember correctly, and so that was more time for, and coming off a, you know, heavy drinking spell and everything. And so when I got out of the Marines, then the drinking pretty much stopped. I started looking more and more closer to God at that time. But even from that, I mean, from that, I went to college and I became a CPA and led a successful life, in and out of a relationship with God.
I gotta tell you, you're a strong man. You're a very, very strong man, because it just, when the hits just keep on hitting you, you're like Rocky Balboa. You just never gave up. And it sounds like the biggest accomplishment that you also have is your wife. When did you meet her?
So as a young guardian of my little brother and sister, I knew I had to get an education so I could do something. So I went to college and majored in accounting, and I met my wife in a computer science class. And uh, interesting story is when I worked the entire time I was in college. There was uh, part-time jobs, full-time jobs, and extra jobs, and so it was like, whew, man, we're glad when I ever get through this school. But so I walked into a class, and it happened to be an evening class, and she was there before I was, and I saw her sitting there, and I knew it that she tells the story a little differently than I do, by the way. But I knew at that time that I was going to marry her.
Mm.
It was like, she's the one. And and I think she has some story that she saw me and couldn't stand me or something like that. But
Sounds about right.
yeah, but I was persistent, and and that's how I met her, in the classroom.
Somebody wrote, becoming the spiritual and financial covering for your younger siblings is a heck of a calling and a challenge.
Oh, definitely a challenge. I can tell you. Uh, when I got the phone call that she was dying, the only thing I can remember after that is slamming the phone down in the receiver down in the phone, and saying, "How much more? How much more can I take?" So that was uh, difficult.
So, with everything that's just been happening, now you're raising or you're the guardian of your siblings, your younger siblings. You're pushing through at school, meeting somebody. It. So the question I have now, since you're retired from CPA, have you started unpacking a lot of the other experiences that you have been just pretty much snow plowing through?
The 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 whole, as you know, I mean, as a Marine, um, I'm not going to talk about my weakness. I'm not going to reach out to somebody and say, "Hey, I need help." I'm not going to do that on my own, you know. And it's like, uh, I I went through, when I got into, after I graduated from college and became a CPA. My only thought was, I need to be self-employed, and so I started self-employment shortly after that. Maintained uh, 51 years of self-employment, of doing income taxes. During that process, I had full-time jobs, part-time jobs, and everything else to get my business growing. And uh, it's like kind of becoming kind of self-reliant,
Hmm.
and not giving God too much credit for anything. The
Keith, can you hold that one thought? I just want to let my dog in. He's just going to keep barking and he's going to keep picking it up through the mic. Can you just hold on 1 second for me?
Sure, absolutely.
I'm sorry about that. If Otherwise, all my dog was going to keep doing was going to have the frequency of barking going up and up and up, and then all of a sudden it's just going to be picking up in the back of the mic. So I apologize.
That's just fine. That's fine. Uh,
So you say you were being self-employed, and that's what you needed to do.
yes, and as years went on of being self-employed, it's like I really then began to feel as though that was God's calling. As who likes taxes, right? Nobody likes taxes, but it's part of our society that we need that to fund the various programs,
Mm-hmm.
including defense and social programs, whatever. But and, and so by doing that and helping people to lower their taxes, people would pay outrageous amounts of tax, and they would do extra if they didn't have some sort of control over that and some tax planning.
Hmm.
And so, and there are legal ways of saving on your taxes, and so it's an injustice to someone to pay more than they should be. And it was always my thought. And so I helped many people to save on their tax money, help many people to get through problems with the Internal Revenue Service, which is trauma in itself, right? And so I felt that as a calling. And at the same time, the trauma of my whole life of all the ruckus and carrying on through Vietnam and after and struggles just through life, all mounting up, and it's all building up on the inside. And I had nightmares for a long time. Had nightmares from combat situations. I had nightmares from knocking on somebody's door, ringing their doorbell to tell them that their son was being killed in combat. Nightmares from arguments with the Internal Revenue Service. And so it was inside trauma. Just on the outside, I'm still a tough guy.
Mm-hmm.
I was a tough guy, and I knew that, and I knew I handled tough situations that I could. But inside, it was kind of like a hamster in a wheel or something. I'm running and tossing and not knowing what's going on. I'd led that type of life, that type of inside unsettlement, lack of peace for practically my entire adult life. And after the pandemic, and then we couldn't work. We couldn't work in an office together. And then the county gave us an exception as tax office, tax preparer office, and allowed us to work in an office together again under certain conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody wanted to come back. And so that created some stress in itself. Some did, but not on a solid basis, not a full time actually. And so this is tax season, and so it was very difficult. It was a lot of stress, and I was alone in my office, and I at that time had kept a bottle in my left hand desk drawer. And I pulled out a bottle of scotch, and I took the cap off and just took a big drink from that, put it down, kind of slammed it down, if I recall, and started to do that again. When I said no, I remember just shouting out no, and I can't do this anymore. And that's when I cried out to God. I said, there's got to be more, and begged for forgiveness. As a Marine, you know, you don't like to admit you're being broken,
Mm-hmm.
but that night, well, I broke, and I surrendered. As a Marine, that's another thing you're not going to do. You're not going to surrender. But that night, I surrendered to Jesus Christ. And there's a difference of surrendering to an enemy and surrendering to a friendly God. The 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 the, the total overwhelming experience since then has been phenomenal. And so what I did is I took my experiences from the time my dad died to almost the present day of writing the book. And it's the memories, it's the pain, the turmoil, and my redemption. And I poured that into a fictional Marine that I named Kevin Casey. And so every name in the book is fictional. The pain, the experience, and the redemption are all mine. And and from that came the book.
What was the hardest part about writing the book?
Oh,
Or what was the most difficult part about writing the book?
so when I started writing that, I was really writing it to myself, just trying to say what the heck happened. You know, how did I go from there to from that place to be here?
Hmm.
And why? Was always the question. And so uh, by doing that and really sitting down and writing things that I guess I probably would never talk about in a conversation before. Um, uh, some of the things I talk about, my Vietnam experience, I used to do that somewhat freely. Sometimes I'd talk about it and I'd choke up, but um, a lot of it I could talk about. But there's a lot too that I still wouldn't probably talk about.
What I learned is that, and I learned this the hard way, and you said something before about surrendering. You used it, then surrendering to God and actually showing weakness as a Marine. I look at God and I use the metaphor like an ocean. If you try to fight the waves, you will exhaust yourself out into the point that you are completed and you will drown. If you learn how to ride the waves, you'll be able to understand the beauty and the ability of what it can do for you. When the other thing when you said about talking, it's when I shared parts of my Marine Corps experience with people, sometimes what I would do is to push them away and to be able to make it such a bite that they wouldn't want to ask a question because it hurt so much to actually share for me personally.
Sure.
But then in other times, what I've learned is, and this is why I started up this podcast, is when we go through the traumas and we actually sit there in therapy and we talk to a therapist and we actually, or a really trusted confidant, we're able to understand the emotion. We're able to explore the emotions that are trapped in those memories, those historical events that we participated in. Those emotions suck. And if we don't know how to even be able to identify the emotions, it's kind of like reading Sanskrit with no education.
Mm.
And having somebody that's able to teach or be able to show starts to take the bite out, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
And like, go ahead.
No,
What I was going to say too, Mr. Keith, is that you're like the shit that you went through. You're like, yeah, I got shot. Then I got shot again. And then I got shot again. And at first, I was about to make a joke to you, and I was going to ask you, I was going to say that your friends didn't want to stand next to you anymore because you were a lead magnet. But, but as a Marine to a Marine, you know that it's kind of a joke, but at the same time, it's a very intimate experience that you just experienced when you were overseas. And when you come back from war, it's almost impossible to share with people because you want to keep them safe. You don't want to burden them with our problems. And I wanted to say it was a privilege to hear about some of your experience over in Nam, because it was not a pretty place. The next thing I want to say is that I have a personal friend of mine. Her name is Chelsea. She became a CPA, and she was in the Marine Corps too. She was one of those little Marines. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, like the 5 foot nothing. Yeah, and she was saying that your story brought awe to her.
Mm.
And your story does have quite a bit of like it has so much beauty in it and it has so much it's a privilege to be able to listen to it. I wanted to say that there and I wanted to ask you more questions if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, please do.
So Keith, when you wrote this book, what did you want the readers to understand?
So when I wrote the book and I went into uh, the actual what I wrote in is the God's Recovery Plan, helped me tremendously. And um, and so when that I started realizing if this helps me, I'm not the only person who's been in combat. And then, but I thought at the same time, it's not just people. You didn't have to be in the Marine Corps and be in combat for this to help. Any type of trauma, anything. But it didn't have to be burnout. It could actually just everyday stress and whatever might be going on in an individual's life. We all have something, and so it was like if my story can help someone else to improve their mental health, then it's worth writing the book. But the things I would like for people to know is you're not alone in this battle. Not even by a little. Like I said earlier, I totally forsook my mother, my little brother and sister's feelings totally when my dad died. Everything was on me. It all turned, my thoughts turned into me and my pain. And I ended up in Vietnam. But I think I think the most important thing is what I'm saying is don't try to fight the battle alone, and surrender to God is definitely not weakness. And if you think it's weakness, then what you do is surrender him to him, and then tell people you did.
Hmm.
Then you find out you are not weak.
What did you feel when you actually surrendered? When you actually slammed the bottle down or the glass down that you said? And then what did you feel that night after you accepted God back in?
Peace, just ah, insurmountable rest, restful feeling. I felt total peace. It was like uh, uh, incredible. The, the thing of it is that that night didn't heal me, but it started me on the right path to being healed.
Hmm.
So my my surrender to Christ was not as it is, and it was St. Paul on his way to Damascus, where he got knocked off his horse by the bright light, and and uh, and, and totally turned him upside down. But it is a real part of my life, and totally, uh, I saw that I had actually a new calling by writing the book. In
When you go ahead. No, go ahead.
in the book, the last part of it, like I had said, was the uh, uh, God's recovery plan. And so, in God's recovery plan, um, consists of 8 steps in a way. I don't know what else to call them besides steps. It's a praiser, so it's an acronym with the A standing for action, P for prayer, R for reading scripture, A for affirmation, I is for inscribing, which is um, the writing in your gratitude journal.
Mm-hmm.
S is for seeing, which is visualization, visualizing things that lives that you do not possess, and keeps your mind. And E is for exercise, and R is for rest.
Hmm.
So there's those 8 things. Each one of them is grounded in Scripture, and so this goes on for 12 weeks. Each week, the verses change for
Hmm.
each one of those. And so it becomes uh, 12 weeks. 12 weeks long. And each week has a theme that is based on one verse of Psalm 62.
Hmm.
And it's like the first one is action. As a CPA entrepreneur, uh, whether it was 100% of being an entrepreneur or if I was also working a full-time job at the time.
Hmm.
Either way, I was putting in the hours. And and the plate was always full and always overloaded.
Hmm.
um, and you just take everything you got and you throw in all your work and everything into something like that, and it creates a lot of pressure and builds on top of other turmoil that you might be having in your life. Well, that's how it was for me.
It's if everything stays busy, that means I don't need to think. And if everything stays busy, that means I'm being productive and I don't look weak.
Exactly. I am this strong tough guy that I've convinced myself, or the Marine Corps convinced me, one or the other.
Hey Keith, have you ever done concrete work at all?
No.
Well, the reason I bring it up is if you ever do concrete work, which you probably won't ever need to, is if you pour concrete and it heats up too fast on the outside, the inside of it becomes soft. It still actually keeps all that moist and all the aggregates and all the cement that's inside of it actually stays very soft and weak and brittle.
Oh boy.
And when we actually need to hard ourselves up, the inside becomes very flawed. It doesn't actually become worked through. So when we actually are able to fall apart, we're able to then start to rebuild the whole foundation from within. And what I hear about when you're talking about is ascribing to God and also being able to read and journal and write, you're understanding it. You're working the inside out.
Mhm.
And you're softening the exterior because the information that you're retaining, the love that you're actually starting to be able to feel, you're making yourself more malleable. And you're an impressive dude. And I got a couple other big questions for you. It might be a little bit difficult, but we'll see how they go. When you were a young kid and your father passed away, what was something that you wish that somebody told you?
Huh. Wow. Uh, that is a very tough question. I think that probably the biggest thing would go go to college, and then if you want to go in the Marine Corps, go in as an officer. Two different worlds.
Very different worlds. The other question I got for you, because you explored the life that you chose, and either from resistance or repelling, but now the question I have that follows up to this: what do you wish somebody spoke to you about your experience, or what type of permission that you wish you had after coming back from Nam?
Say that again, please.
So, what do you wish somebody said to you, spoke to you, or gave you permission when you came back from Vietnam?
Um,
Maybe I'm wording the question wrong, but I'm asking about like the healing part.
yeah, I think the best thing is if had I been able had I been able to sit down with people. I don't care if it's a pastor or a friend or somebody that I could have actually expressed my feelings. I think if I could somehow, had I been able to unwrap or unravel my Marine Corps experience, uh, there- while in the Marine Corps, whether it's in combat or whether it's notifying next of kin, I mean, I lived with that forever.
Hmm.
The pain and the turmoil was real, and waking up in the middle of the night thinking I'm being shot in the head or something. I mean, those were real feelings. But like I said earlier, I was a Marine. I'm a member of the greatest fighting force on the earth, and I'm tough.
Hmm. You are tough. And you joined the cult. You drank the Kool-Aid, or like we like to say, you drank the crayon juice. But and the reason I ask you these really valuable questions, I feel like they are, is because a lot of men, children, they don't know how to always express those emotions. And sometimes we have not been privileged enough or taught or role model because our parents didn't know how to. And that's okay.
Yes.
And it's not, there's no shot towards our parents. It's actually meeting our parents with love and respect and empathy, because what I would love to do with my platform is actually hopefully give people the permission to heal, the permission to fail forward, to be able to have those type of dialogues. Because there's women, actually the two of the people that are listening right now are women. One was married to a Delta guy, the other one is a Marine, and she was married to another Marine. And it gives insight into quite a bit of the struggles that we went through, you went through, I went through, different experiences. And how do we give birth to that type of dialogue so that we're given permission for that person that we genuinely love to say, hey, fall apart,
Mhm.
and we got you. You're not going to slip through the hands. You're not going to break anything. In meeting with love. And I could tell that you were very, and I, no smoke up the butt. It's actually, you're a very strong man. You're a very wise man, and you could see that you speak with such passion and love and empathy. And I just want to help normalize that conversation.
Well, thank you for those comments. Um, I think that it, one of the greatest experiences that I've had so far from writing this book has been that my church has decided to use this book in the meditation class, and so we've gone through the chapters, and we're now this next week will be the second week of going through uh, the appraiser, the second week of the workbook, and that's been a wonderful experience because I don't go to that meeting as an author. I don't go there as a teacher by any means, but as a fellow traveler with them in their experiences. And so it's like, uh, and that's been very rewarding as some may see something that resonates or helps them find answers to a question they may have.
A friend of mine wrote this, and I think that you would actually agree with this. Strength without resilience is brittle. You need a little bend, a little softness, or you'll shatter.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But I appreciate you sharing that and taking it such an honor as the church, as being a person that walks besides people, and not even though that you're the author, you're also experiencing it with them. And the roles that we play, sometimes we have to be able to take a step back to be able to meet people where they're at, and not in front, not behind, but actually sometimes side by side. Mr. Keith, what is a message that you would like to give to the audience? And what the follow-up question afterwards is, where can they find you, and where can they actually purchase your book?
So I think my best advice, if I call it advice, I guess, um, is that just don't try to fight the battle alone, and reach out to somebody you trust, be a friend or a counselor, pastor, support group. It's someone you trust, and and remember that healing often just begins with one honest conversation. And for me personally, I discovered that surrendering my burdens, my pain to God wasn't a weakness. It is not a weakness. It was the beginning of what I call this true strength.
Surrendering to God is not a weakness, but it's a true strength. Hey, Keith, I will let you know this too. I've been struggling and I've been talking about this, and I talk and I'll think and I'll talk and I'll think about something before I make the next move. I've been trying to be able to find a way to be able to give my life back to Christ, and it's something that I'm working on. It's it's been difficult, as you probably are well aware, but it's something that I've been working on, and I wanted to say that your story really was inspiring to me, sir.
That means a lot, and I really appreciate you saying that. The I believe that the the workbook. So I have the 12 weeks is in the actual book, but the book is like, like 9 by 6. It's a small book. It's not like an atlas or something. Yeah. And so what I did, I also published a workbook, and so that the workbook is 8.5 by 11.
Hmm.
So it's more usable, and so I think that uh, what well actually you can I have a website which is recoverybyfaith.com, and there uh, besides there's other resources, but included in it is links where you can get the book and the work.
Hmm.
And so I actually have the workbook there as a PDF that can be downloaded for cost less than if you buy the workbook bound.
Hmm.
So and the book itself is an easy read. I I use words I could understand.
Well, I wanted to say this, Mr. Keith. I appreciate it. And I will be back in touch with you so that people can be able to put it on there. I just streamed this live, and I wanted to say thank you so very much for your time, sir.
Well, thank you. I'm very grateful that you allowed me on your program, and I pray for God's blessings for you and for your audience.
Keith,